Welcome to the HIT Podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. This is the finale, part 3 of our 3-part series. If you missed part 1, go back 2 weeks ago. If you missed part 2, go back to last week. We are here live on the ground at the CAHR conference, pulling in attendees, speakers, guests, vendors, clipping together the sights and sounds of the conference. Check out the highlight reel coming next. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Steph.
Hey.
You just got off stage.
I did.
That's awesome. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
Have you spoken at a Pyro conference before?
No, this is my first.
Love it. How'd it go?
I hope well. I got good feedback, so I'm going to say yes, it went well.
Good. Well, I heard it went very, very well.
Thanks.
What'd you talk about?
So we talked about culture starts with recruiting.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks think about recruiting as, oh, we need this person for X, and then they forget how to tie in this person being a good fit for the company, right? And starting with your culture.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? How do you do that? That's what we presented on.
Talk to me about kind of some of the stuff you covered on stage.
So one is like alignment. You need to go beyond just your hiring managers. You need to ask yourself, where is the value and who should be a part of this interview process? And who knows your culture best to drive that? Like, as far as we're concerned, your recruiting is your first line of defense.
Yeah.
If your recruiting team is not on par with what those values and cultures are, then your defense is useless.
Yeah.
And sure, you want your hiring manager involved, and then maybe cross-functional. Like, who are these people going to work with? Different personalities coming in. I think the biggest takeaway too we share is, before you start getting into the conversation of who your company is and what you're looking for and whatnot, start by asking them without talking about yourself. Ask them, what are you looking for in the organization? How do you think you best how do you best learn? How do you take feedback? Like, how do you interact with your managers? And then I'll tell you what we're looking for, because I don't want you to form your answer with biases for what I'm looking for. Because if you're not a good fit, then let's have that conversation, and I'll save your time. Don't want to push you through something that's not going to work, and that's okay. It's not like good or bad, it's just not a good fit.
Yeah, I made a joke earlier. For every pot, there's a lid. Right? It doesn't need to be a pro or a con, right?
No, not at all.
Do you find this ratchets up in importance as you get to maybe higher leverage roles and positions? So as we go from line employees up to managers and C-suites?
Yes. But I don't want to negate the importance even at those roles either.
Yeah.
Because every role is important. But sure, definitely, I would say the emphasis comes into play where, okay, maybe they're starting out, to your example, something line, but we should be thinking longevity, right? So if this person's not always going to be in the individual contributor role, and they are going to work with people, what's that going to look like? Are they going to be able to do it? Maybe, maybe not. No concrete way to determine it, but we should be thinking about these things, not just 50 feet ahead of us.
So you make a good case for this being important for every single hire.
Oh yeah.
How about once we've already got folks in, do you guys talk much about kind of how do we train and coach up? So now as an employer, we've decided this is important.
Right.
How do I espouse that to my managers and hiring folk and the rest of my company?
Well, if you put in all this work in recruiting that special person, right? They're the culture fit and the tech fit. You gave them the 5-star treatment, the white gloves. That doesn't stop right there. So what's your onboarding look like? What is your team doing, not just day one, but the first 2-3 weeks? What's your hiring manager doing? If you're not having those conversations, or at least involving your TA or HR business partners, then let's go back and have that conversation.
What are some places you see people not doing a great job on that? What are some failures?
Onboarding. I mean, it's beyond just your paperwork and your I-9. Who are they talking to that first week? Who are the key stakeholders?
And our big focus here in the HR space is our Certified Professional in Disability Management. So it's a really robust certification course that is total absence management, and it's something that seems to really be missing in the market.
I mean, tell me more about it. If I'm an HR person listening, it's that's intriguing. Keep going.
Of course. So, we find that there's a lot of organizations doing specific ADA or FMLA or micro courses, but there's not really a big, robust leave program. So What this focuses on is integrated disability and absence management. So what it is it's a total absence management. You're not just managing empty seats, you're bringing in all of your disability and leave accommodations, absences into one system. You have an individual disability and absence management coordinator, so the employee has a more positive experience. So that's the concept behind it. So the course itself will teach you about all of the state, federal, local, and employer programs. It goes through, the second course in it is the concepts course.
So it's literally teaching the HR practitioner, him or herself?
Yes.
Okay, and how long are these courses?
So the certification, the on-demand version will take 33 hours of classwork. It's in an interactive SCORM content with video and knowledge checks and quizzes, so it keeps the learner engaged. And you're not only going to go through the concepts of the programs and the way they all work together, but then you also talk about prevention and intervention and mental health and behavioral risks. And then the third part of it even goes into metrics and measurement. And how do you pitch this to your C-suite and show them that this is something they need to invest resources in?
What are you looking forward to most?
You know, the educational sessions are great. I just went one to leadership, soulful leadership. So I think because of the move, it got me to think about, question everything. I was questioning everything. From, you know, how did I get there? What my story has been like? Who do I want to be going forward? What is it that worked in the past and that is not working now?
Who do you want to be going forward?
Me. All me.
Good. What does that mean?
You know, well, showing up as who I am. You know, I think that in the past, I had this concept of keeping my story, personal story, out of the job. And now I think I don't want to do that anymore.
Is that something you advise HR professionals to evaluate for themselves, but maybe you see some value in an authentic and transparent version of yourself?
I think we do need to change the way we look at ourselves as people that have an impact on others. Because if we don't allow ourselves to be us, we don't allow others to be themselves, you know? And so I think there's a great need. I think in the past, and maybe it's age a little bit and life's experiences, but I think in the past it was about going up. You would get into a company, just, you know, what's next. Even though we didn't really know what that looked like. And at some points I think it's lonely.
It's what?
It's lonely, you know? Because these positions, especially HR positions, you have so much to do, and some of it is unseen, right? And you don't really, you cannot really
Probably
talk
a lot
to.
Of it.
You cannot really talk to anybody really because some of the decisions impact those around you. So you have to keep everything inside.
Which can be difficult, obviously, right?
Yes, you know.
And is that where you advocate for obviously not spilling the beans on stuff you're not supposed to, but maybe being a little bit more transparent version of yourself and maybe garnering some trust amongst employees?
Right. So I think the easier it is to be able to speak about your story and who you are and accept it, the easier it is to allow others to tell you about their stories. And then that's how you find what really motivates them, what really, you know, what are they passionate about. And I think a lot of people are afraid to say what they really think and what they really want to do and what really inspires them.
We were just talking a moment ago off camera about how I work with the Arthritis at Work Foundation, how I'm the corporate chair of their Jingle Bell Run coming up, and you were like, I love those guys. They do a whole Wellness Wednesdays. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you have going on?
Absolutely. So I'm really big on wellness. I think it's so important for the employees. When they feel well, obviously there's a lot of scientific reports and data that employees that are productive is because they're doing well. There's many other things, but wellness really is a big part of it. So I started Wellness Wednesdays like 3 years ago. I've been with this company.
Yeah.
I send out some information that I get from either CAHR,
yeah.
I get from other providers, and then Arthritis at Work, I met them 2 years ago here at this conference.
Yeah.
And they approached me and they told me about their services, how it works, and I've been a partner with them. I utilize their content.
So
very practical, and it's very user friendly. So they actually built a page with branding my company for employees to go to. There's a QR code, very user friendly, and it really looks impressive for the employees. It looks like we went and did all this when actually it's no work for us.
Yeah.
Arthritis at Work did everything.
I will say that I just came from Lauren Sweeney's Spotlight talk.
Yeah.
And it was about like being seen and heard and relevant, and it really like got me motivated.
I'm so glad to hear someone talk about the Spotlight talks too, because that's another thing about the conference where you've got the general sessions and you've got all this content available to you on the back end on the digital side.
Right.
But catching those Spotlight talks,
Yeah, and it was neat. They had like the little headphones because obviously we're right here in the middle of the marketplace or the exhibit hall, and so it can be a little loud. So they have like the headphones, but Lauren's chat was so well attended that they ran out of headphones.
Good for her. What were some of the things she hit? I know you said being seen and heard, but like dive a little deeper with me.
Some of the things that she mentioned were like to be seen, like wear bold colors.
Yeah.
Don't shrink away and like navy blue and black
and
gray.
Everyone looks down in their black, navy, and gray.
But wear bold colors. Work on your confidence. And I would say the biggest takeaway from that was your job title isn't who you are.
For sure.
It's all of the adjectives that make up, who you are. And your title has nothing to do with that. All of your knowledge has nothing to do with that. People hired you for a reason. And it wasn't because I'm sure a lot of that had to do with their skill set, but they like that you're dynamic and engaging and inspirational and you're empathetic, you have good like EI. And so
emotional intelligence.
So many other things that like make up who you are and don't value yourself based on that scale, because what happens when you lose the title, or maybe you have a lot of identity in like being in your marriage, and if you lose your spouse, like you don't want to position yourself to where you lose your identity because things have changed.
That gets like borderline philosophical, right? And so we're looking at it from the work standpoint. You're like, hey, some of this is good, like practical advice, but some of this like zooms out and it gets a little macro. Okay, so with respect to some of those like employee-focused changes, what do you think are some things that you think are good changes that you'd like to wrap your arms around? You say, I underwrite this.
Yeah, absolutely. The changes in how we deal with people with disabilities specifically, and the accommodations that are available with technology, and companies being more open to use that technology. I work specifically in the disability space with my company and doing accommodations, and being able to to look at an employee who may be blind that we wouldn't have looked at before. With the new technologies we can now bring in these people and have a more diverse climate, and it changes everything.
Super interesting. So you're almost even talking about an ability to expand where previously the person literally just probably couldn't do the role.
Exactly.
And now if we're a little thoughtful about it, we're a little up to date on those accommodations, this person might be considered.
Absolutely, and I think owners and boards in and of themselves are more open to those types of people now, and they're more understanding of how they work, and I think that's been wonderful to see.
Rona, thank you so much for being on. I'm so excited to have you on here. So let me just dive right into it for the audience.
Go for it.
Yes. You were here at the CAHR conference, and you were here talking, discussing, doing what?
Well, I am a play instigator.
Yes.
And it's all about bringing out your inner child and showing how play and work go together. Yes. So my talk was unleashing curiosity, how childlike wonder leads to better critical thinking.
Yeah.
And it does. You can't
Talk to me about some of the data behind that.
Well, it's you cannot have critical thinking without curiosity, because they're both about asking questions.
Yeah.
When you are curious, I mean, think about when you were a kid.
Yeah.
How many questions did you ask during the day?
Does why over and over and over and over again count?
Exactly. This is more than, I think it's Simon Sinek did the 5 whys.
Yeah.
This is better because you're not just asking why, you're asking who, where, what, all these other things.
Yes.
And that leads to innovative thinking and how to look at things differently, which is what critical thinking is.
So you're here at the conference. Have you been to the conference before?
I have not. It's my first time.
This is why I wanted to chat with you. What brought you out to the conference?
We have a couple locations here in California.
Uh-huh.
We work nationwide.
Uh-huh.
We work in many different states. And we just wanted to keep up to date with all the different changes that are happening in California.
And so you have some responsibility to keep aware of the California new stuff and legislation and requirements, and so you thought this is the right conference to come to.
That is correct, yes.
And how's it holding up so far? It's early, I know.
Yeah, no, it's holding out great. A lot of the information, I keep making mental note of who I need to track down later to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, and did you attend the session that I ran earlier today?
I did, I was there.
Your thoughts on that?
It was great.
You have to say it's good now that we're on camera together, but what are your real thoughts?
I took a couple notes. I had to take my notepad out because at first I was just listening. And I was like, this is fine, this is great. And then I was like, I need to take a note of that. That is important. I need to come back to this one.
Oh, good.
So I kept going back to that. So
what are you looking forward to most about the conference?
Clearance on some of the new regulations, a couple answers, hopefully connect with people that have similar experiences in the overall, so compensation, pay, HRIS systems, seeing what's new. I was watching some of their booths and getting their information because there are benefits that we're interested in.
Mike, I appreciate your insurance IQ, how you keep yourself abreast, and I would love for you to just introduce yourself to the listeners, a little bit about who you are, a little bit about what you do, and a little bit about why I, who have spent 56 episodes convincing these people I know stuff about insurance, would say out loud, this guy knows something about insurance.
I appreciate that, Toby. Well, so I'm Mike Patton. I'm the CEO of XL Health Plans. We're a partially self-insured health plan, level funded and not level funded if you're a super large group or are interested in that. But really what we are is a conglomeration of what you would describe as point solutions, prefabbed into a consistent recipe of cost containment, typically on PPO networks, mostly like the off-brand PPOs, your First Healths, your PHCS multi-plans, built around the concept.
But you call it off-brand, but also, that's UHC's network.
Exactly,
right? So
HealthSmart is UHC.
It's a pretty good network.
I like to use the brand, it's like Kirkland, where
they're white labeling
because First Health is owned by Aetna.
Right.
HealthSmart is owned by UHC, so they're like they're lower label brands, and for the listeners in health insurance, that doesn't mean, usually it means that they have access to all the same providers, but their discount off of billed charges is actually slightly
It's different, and we can talk about that.
Sure.
But the provider access points are
exactly, and that's the thesis on Excel, is that most of the plans and the easiest point of transition away from like the traditional health model is to make sure that access to providers is the same. Is when you move from like a Blue Cross to HealthSmart, here in Los Angeles, you're not losing access to any providers. It's just a different logo on the corner of your car.
Yeah, so you tell your employee you can still see Cedars.
You can still see Cedars, you can still see UCLA. Literally every freestanding hospital in LA is part of HealthSmart, and so are all the providers. So
and then to unpack for the listener, when you say we're a bunch of point solutions, what you're basically saying is, look, when we take a plan from a fully insured space to any version of self-funded, whether or not it's level funded, self-funded, however we shift claims liability, we have designed something to where the employer now has even more skin in the game with respect to claims dollars that go out the window. And so we can find these other vendors who come in these kind of surgical and specific places, kind of pardon the pun, to say from the overall claims that are unfolding, this pocket of claims we can make less expensive.
Exactly.
And another vendor says this pocket of claims we can make less expensive. And so you build out this ecosystem to say, Mr. and Mrs. Employer, take on the claims liability, and of course we'll write you stop loss to make sure no one claim blows up, no aggregate blows up, but within the respect of expected claims, we can push that down a little with this prescription.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the thing is that it's a consistent recipe of that, so that way, probably the most difficult thing for the listeners to understand is underwriting that is the trickiest portion. If you go to any random stop-loss carrier as a benefits consultant and say, hey, here's all the things that I'm going to do, give me a 20% discount. If you're using one of those PPO networks, they're not likely to give you that full 20% discount up front. So what we've done with our data and our track record is, we've been able to prove out with our volume over the course of the last, 24, 36 months that this plan design yields this result.
Right.
And that's allowed us to get preferential pricing with underwriters, and so we can pass that along to the employer group up front so they can see that savings up front in the initial RFP.
And some of the types of examples of this might be, see the same surgeon you want to see. Mm-hmm. Get the same surgery you were going to get.
Yep.
But rather than doing it in a hospital setting, can we talk to you about why you might want to do it in a different setting? And maybe not even can we talk to you, but can we, A, literally talk to you, like some outreach, but B, maybe change your member responsibilities, right? Maybe you do have a deductible here, you don't have a deductible there. That type of steerage is something, we talked a little bit offline, but you've seen some success with.
Yeah, exactly. And that is our primary prognosis, and how we advocate for all of those solutions is we offer them up to the member for free. So the member waives all cost sharing responsibility. And this is the larger ticket items like your surgeries, cancer care, but it's also small ticket items like imaging, which we all know can be pretty expensive or is actually very affordable if you go to the outpatient imaging centers. So we waive that cost, or even things as small as lab work.
Right.
Lab work is also home to a lot of upcharging. And so, we have a direct agreement with Quest, which is, UHC operates the exact same fashion. You have to work through LabCorp with UHC, and you have to bill LabCorp. Even if you go to a provider's office, they don't allow the provider to upcharge it. They use UHC's direct pricing with LabCorp. It's really the exact same thing that we've got with Quest. So, if you go into your provider, they bill Quest direct. You don't even have to pay anything for that lab, or you can go into Quest directly yourself and do it. So it's pretty simple on the member's end, but yields some pretty significant savings for employers, and also reduces the employees' personal out-of-pocket exposure.
That's all the time we have for you here today. Thank you so much for joining us in our three-part series capturing the sights and sounds. This week's episode was brought to you by True Hue, and that is our Live from the Ground series. We'll see you next week. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.